Good morning! We're back looking at my World War I trench diorama. Today I'm going to show you about the laboratory, which is this bottom level. We're going to look at one of the most, I guess, detail-intensive environments that I have in this entire diorama. There's just a bunch of stuff in here. I'll start with an empty room and then just fill it with details enough that it tells its own story visually. I hope you enjoy it. Let's go! In an earlier video, I showed, the building of the space, but what I really didn't mention was I put these center posts in here for a very specific reason. The first two details I'm building are this blast wall out of brick and a big chalkboard. Here's the bird's eye view of the test lab, and I've got three different areas. Back here, it's where they observe and make notes. Then here next to it is where they test the actual flamethrower they're going to be building. And then here they've got like all their parts and stuff. So this is where the workbenches are and this is where they're building it from. If you remember these two posts from the beginning, that's where I got the idea of making three different work zones when I was building the structure. Well, you may have figured out I like chalkboards. I think there's 3 or 4 in here. I've lost count now. But they're really easy to make. I use really thin hobby plywood. It's a 1 millimeter thick. I spray paint it with flat black spray paint. And once it's dried, I kind of burnish the surface. That smooths it over like slate. Now at this point, you can actually be done with just the frame on it, but I wanted to make this into a standing chalkboard like at the beginning of the first Indiana Jones movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark. I turned a couple of vertical posts and then I just put feet on them. After that, it was just putting them, on those pins. You can just see it right in the middle of the side of the chalkboard there. Once those were all put on, I just kind of leveled it up on the tabletop, make sure everything was square and let it dry and we're all good. I'll typically start with larger items when I'm trying to detail out a room. And because of that, I can then maybe adjust them. And I had to do it on both of these. I'm going to do the blast wall now. And the blast wall is supposed to be something that, the flamethrower is firing into. Here you can see I taped a little straight edge along my bench, and then I just started dry stacking them. I wanted to see how they would react to, putting a little bit of thin Mod Podge on them, and it was actually frankly amazing. It soaked in the Mod Podge so much that I had a hard time pulling bricks apart after I put that Mod Podge on them. The bricks are really porous, and I think what happened is you get the Mod Podge on there with the water, it soaks up the water. The only thing that's left is the Mod Podge, and man, they glued together immediately. It's not even dry, and I'm able to handle this thing and place it in the diorama to make sure it fits. This is Sculpey air dry clay, and it's my first choice when I want to use a clay. It does shrink, so it's not something that I want to use where that's going to be apparent, but like for putting, a bunch of sandbags down or something like that, it works great. After rolling out a little ball and then using this piece of glass to make, just a long worm, I'll take a piece of cloth, and by pressing that down, I can kind of get a little bit of a fabric texture on the sandbags. Then I just cut them to length and start putting them in. I don't want to stack these in a nice even pattern. I think of it like soldiers filling sandbags and throwing them on a pile. When it's hot and dry outside, I, put a little bit of water on it while I'm working with it, and that helps keep it from cracking and just like the surface drying out too quick. While it's still soft, but everything's in place, I'll go back now and put seams. I'll put folds, on the fabric. Just try to modify them so that they look a little bit more like, regular sandbags that have been piled up. It's now the next morning. I've done the front. This is the front. Here's another shot of the front. But the back, right here, that sticks out a little bit. And when I put it back in the diorama, I thought, I'm losing a lot of floor space because of this back, so I need to kind of whittle that down a little bit so I can reclaim some of that floor space. Once these are dry, they're pretty much plaster, so I just took it over to my belt sander, took it down pretty good, and then finished up with a file because there's a post on the wall that I need to kind of work my way around. Okay, so let's see how close I got and what further mods are necessary. Oh wow, that looks good. Yeah. That's all I want to do. That's it. Right there. This is how I modified the front, because I thought the brick, you know, being blasted with flame and stuff like that would deteriorate, you know, it'd kind of be pitted or something like that. So I took a lot of time and kind of roughed up the front of it before I tried to paint it. I started with the mortar. I just took some white paint and kind of drizzled it in the middle of them. Not all of them. You know, I wanted to look like the mortar had flaked out. Then I painted this gray kind of circle and then a black circle on top of it and then just a white circle. And that's it. At that point, I went ahead and took some TS80 flat clear from the Tamiya, you know, little rattle can, and I sprayed that, and that's where these blotches came from. I did not plan on these blotches, but I love them. They look cool. They look like the brick is deteriorating under the heat. So I left them there, and there's our paint job. Now we're going to talk about the Livens large gallery flame projector. Now that's, you know, this is the thing that this is all based on. I found out about this through watching it online. I saw this really cool show, Time Team with Tony Robinson, and they recreated one, and I think it was in conjunction with, you know, the Lord of the Rings or I'm sorry, The Hobbit, and when Peter Jackson was doing Smog. But anyway, they recreated one. They did this massive flamethrower, but they, you know, showed diagrams of this original weapon that I never knew existed. It was built in 1916 by Captain William H. Livens, and basically it was this underground flamethrower that would be installed inside a tunnel. And it was massive. It was 52 or 62 feet long. I got to check my notes. And once it was in place, it had like just massive, huge tanks full of fuel. And the fuel was kerosene and diesel. So the diesel would make it stick and stay, and it was like a heavier chemical. The kerosene was like really, I guess, higher flammability or whatever. And so when it would shoot, it would basically charge up, then it would push up through the turf because it was underground, and then it would shoot this kerosene and diesel mixture into German lines. And it was devastating. I mean, it could turn back and forth. It could swivel. You know, there's a handle on the back of it. You can see that. And they would shoot it into the German lines, and then there would be, I don't know how many companies or whatever, but there were like these little bolt holes that the British soldiers would also burst out, and then they would run in and attack the lines. It was a devastating machine, but it took so much manpower, so much time to put in. It was actually only used 4 times, maybe 5, because the one that was on Time Team, they showed the archaeological dig, it had collapsed before it was had a chance to fire, but they did find it. So anyway, that is the Livens large gallery flame projector, and so everything in the diorama is based on getting this thing in operation so that it can be used against the Germans in World War I. I'm just finishing up my latest edit on my World War I trench diorama, and I just wanted to say thank you. I get so many comments and responses and just really helpful suggestions about new things that I'm building in my latest diorama that I wanted to give a special thank you to everybody that does that. There's a few people that I talk to every single day, and a few people that I talk to weekly. And then there are others that come in like every month. It's so neat and so wonderful for me. And just to know that there are people that you know, they care about the stuff that I build so much they want to help. And so thank you so much for all your comments. And you are really helping, along with my patrons and my YouTube members. I just wanted to give a special shout out to you guys. So thanks very much. Hope you have a great day. We'll see ya.